Okay, so I've started my timer. This is going to be a quick run through. So obviously, yeah, thanks for having me here. My name's Adam. I work as a designer, practitioner and researcher at Winchester School of Art, predominantly IT means design. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how my research might feed into some of the ideas and thoughts that you're thinking about today. And this is just a quick kind of overview of some of the concerns I think that people should have when we're thinking about designing open systems or open activities. And so this leads to, I don't want to cover this in a lot more detail, but I want to kind of get your everyone sort of thinking about these kind of things. So a quick background is that my research so studio-based activities, basically things in an open and collaborative practice in the studio, in a physical location, designing, in this instance, video games. And I'm looking at tools and ways and digital methods that might enhance that collaborative practice and that sharing and that open practice outside of the classroom and into digital spaces. So I've got a quote here that I'm sure everyone is familiar with and understands that this idea of sharing is a basic characteristic of education, and that the building of knowledge and information really can only happen through the sharing openly of information. And so it's really important that we kind of enhance and embrace this, whether we're undertaking research or practice-based research. So unlock this potential was the web. And so the web being made effectively public domain allowed everyone to create web services and web servers that could allow us to share knowledge and information in a really fantastic and fascinating way. And of course, when the Web 2 came along, this really enabled everyone online to share materials. Predominantly, obviously, that was cats. But we know that the web was a bit more interesting than just sharing cats. So the Web 2 enabled everyone to share cats, pictures, etc., and really started to open up this idea of sharing collaboratively and providing by default open practice, and that was really exciting and really interesting. So I'm sure everyone knows this quote, often put to Sir Isaac Newton, that this idea of being able to share information is really important. But what has happened with the web in general terms is that we now access all of that material openly through predominantly two services, that being social media and Google search. So what we've got here is just some clips of Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Now this is a bad thing, and by default people can share stuff and content really, really easily. But of course what we understand from this is this content is manipulated. And I think if we're going to work in open practice, we have to understand this and realise that this is how most people interrogate information, is through the web. But at the moment the web is being manipulated and those timelines are being transformed according to what we say. And so this is born out of predominantly a Silicon Valley business model that is built around the data that's collected. So Silicon Valley uses this data across multiple services to manipulate and change what we see. And if we try and leave these spaces, then often we are told that we shouldn't leave. And that when we do leave those spaces, in fact, we're followed as we leave. And this is something to understand, that when we're creating open scholarly activity or documents, that they are being manipulated by one of the biggest platforms that enables us to provide open access. And that manipulation transforms what we see, transforms what we think. Search, obviously, is another way, and this again is going to be touched in much more detail in the keynote in regards to how you might understand the data that's being collected. I think that we shouldn't be collecting data and that we need to think differently about how we provide material. But Google obviously are trying to modify people's behaviour to buy and sell you more things. So if we're creating material that's supposed to enhance knowledge, we need to understand that when we're putting it on systems, that those systems currently are being modified in maybe ways that we don't want them to be modified, so people have different ideas. So obviously the saying was that on the internet nobody knows you're a dog. Well, actually on the internet now everyone knows you're a dog, probably knows which other dogs you're hanging out with. So this is something we need to be aware of and careful with. So people talk about Facebook and everyone's on there predominantly, or other social media, but we have to understand that if the data's there, it is being manipulated beyond our control. So why do we need to worry about this kind of stuff? Well, the problem is that, as you're going to hear, the data's been described as the new oil. And these data-driven models are now being applied to universities and to learning and to classrooms. And so there's conversations around how we can survey students and people who are looking to find out new things and realise even before they've walked through the door of their first sort of higher education experience that they could be identified as being, failing on their first step. So that's a bit of a worry. This data is now being seen as a way to enhance education, and I don't think it is a way to enhance education. I think it might be a big problem, and we need to be aware of it. So, the web obviously, so Tim Berners-Lee says is decentralised, and actually the problem with the web isn't the fact that the system, it's these search engines, it's Twitter and it's Facebook, and so that we need to be aware of that and think that if this is a massive open platform, in theory, that we might want to utilise, how can we ensure that it doesn't change the way people think and behave because of the leading corporations? So I think there is a push back to a more decentralised system, and I think that if we're thinking about creating open scholarly activity and systems, we need to think decentralised. We need to think about how we allow that data to not be collected in a way that invades people's privacy. And this is important because every tool that we use shapes us. And so those tools and those filters are transforming the way that we're thinking. And some systems, in particular in sort of digital realm, can be pretty boring. And so I think I would encourage everyone who's looking at these and creating materials to think about how they might imagine their materials to be used and maybe viewed in different ways, and ways that allow those things to be connected, not just through a Google search and not just through a Facebook interface, but maybe there's other spatial ways of representing data and representing publications, and ways that allow people to really unlock the knowledge that is there. The clip from Brett Victor, who talks about transforming a classroom to be a space that covers both augmented reality and physical object. I think that's really important when we're developing materials, be that practice-based research or be that documents, that we really try and think about how that might be shared in interesting networks, not Facebook governed way, to ensure that the privacy of the users is kept, but that the openness and the sharing is done in a way that's transformative. And so my job really is to encourage people to think openly about how they're going to develop new systems and not just rely on the web as is. And I want to kind of point everyone to sort of one particular company who's looking at sort of decentralization, which is this company called Indie. They've created an ethical design manifesto, which is about building systems that allow people to share their work and their activities, but do it in a decentralized way, which is by default private. I think that's really important, and I think this is more a tool to say, look, there are ways that we might want to share things that could be interesting, different, but we need to be quite aware of the model that's coming out of Silicon Valley that is pushing data as the answer. Now, we may want to use data, but we need to use it in a way that allows privacy of every person to be respected, and so that starts at the core human rights level, but also we need to make sure that it provides a really fundamentally delightful experience. And so my last slide is to say that data by itself is not enough, but we need to have some sort of poetry, so it needs to be engaging, delightful, fun, and something for us to play with whilst respecting people's privacy. And that is my 9 minutes and 2 seconds talk. Thank you very much.